Call came on a Tuesday morning while I was eating cereal over the kitchen sink and trying not to be late for work. "Is this Paige Ellison?" the woman on the other end asked. Her voice was careful, professional, the kind of voice that means something has already gone wrong. "Yes," I said. "That's me. This is Regions Bank calling regarding a home equity line of credit in the amount of $287,000. We've been attempting to reach you about missed payments. The account is currently 93 days past due." I put my spoon down. "I'm sorry, what account?" She repeated it. "The amount, the account number, my name, my social security number, my date of birth, all of it correct, all of it mine." "There must be a mistake," I said. My voice came out steady even though my hands had started to shake. "I've never taken out a home equity loan. I don't even own a home." There was a pause on her end. A quiet clicking of keys. "Miss Ellison, this loan is secured against a property at 4412 Birchwood Drive. The primary borrower on file is your mother. You're listed as the cosigner." I sat down on the kitchen floor. I didn't plan to. My legs just stopped working. "Can I call you back?" I said. It wasn't really a question. I had moved to Cincinnati 4 years ago for a job at a mid-sized accounting firm. I was 31. I had a studio apartment on the third floor of a building with a broken elevator and a neighbor who played acoustic guitar until midnight. I had a 401k and a small emergency fund and a credit score I had spent years building from nothing. I did not have a co-signed loan for $287,000 that I had known nothing about. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, which should have been my first clue that something was wrong. My mother screened calls. She had screened calls my entire life. "Paige," she said, "I was going to call you." "The bank called me first," I said. Silence. "Mom." My throat felt like it was closing. "What did you do?" She didn't answer right away. I could hear her breathing. I could hear the television in the background, some daytime program with a laugh track, and I remember thinking how strange it was that the world just kept going while mine was falling apart. "It was the only way," she finally said. "Your brother needed help. We needed the equity. The bank wouldn't approve us without a second income." My brother, of course. Let me tell you about my brother. He's 34. He has never held a job for longer than 8 months. He has started 4 businesses, all of which failed, and for all 4 of them my parents somehow found a way to fund him. He is charming and funny and completely incapable of understanding that other people's money is not his money. My parents have always looked at him the way people look at a sunset, like he's something to be witnessed, something rare, something worth any cost. I had gotten a scholarship for college. He had gotten their savings. I had taken out student loans for grad school. He had gotten a check for a food truck that sat in their driveway for 2 years before being sold for parts. I had never asked them for a single dollar since I was 22, and apparently they had taken it from me anyway. "How long ago?" I asked. 18 months. I did the math without meaning to. 93 days past due meant they had been making payments, or someone had been making payments, for about 15 months before it stopped, and then it stopped. And nobody thought to tell me. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "We didn't want you to worry." "You didn't want me to worry," I repeated, "about a loan in my name. Paige, your brother is going through a hard time. The business didn't work out the way we planned, and—" "Which business?" I asked. "The landscaping one or the one before that?" She went quiet again. "Mom, my name is on a loan I never signed. That's fraud. Do you understand what that word means?" "Don't be dramatic," she said, and her voice had shifted, gone from apologetic to something harder. "You have a good job. You make good money. Your brother is struggling. This is what families do. They help each other." I wasn't asked to help. My signature was forged. "We needed you to say yes and you would have said no." I almost laughed. The honesty of it was almost impressive. "So you just decided for me?" "You've always been so selfish about money," she said. "Even when we needed help, you always had an excuse. Your father and I gave you everything and your brother needs you right now." I didn't say anything. I was sitting on my kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets and I was thinking very clearly, which is what happens to me when I'm most upset. The anger doesn't explode. It goes still. It becomes something cold and precise. I thought about the credit pull I had gotten 2 weeks ago when I was shopping for a car. My score had dropped 40 points and I hadn't been able to figure out why. Now I knew. I thought about how my mother had asked me to come home for Thanksgiving last year, and I had noticed a new truck in the driveway, but my brother had said it was a friend's. Now I wondered. I thought about the phone calls I had missed from a number I didn't recognize over the past 3 months and assumed was a telemarketer. Now I understood. I have to go, I said. Paige, don't do anything stupid. I hung up. I sat there for another 5 minutes. Then I got up off the floor, rinsed my cereal bowl, and put it in the rack to dry. I don't know why I did that. I think I needed something normal to hold on to. Then I called the bank back. The same woman answered. I asked her to walk me through everything, every document, every date, every signature. She was patient. She explained that the loan had been originated at a branch in my parents' town, that the paperwork listed me as a cosigner, and that there were signatures on file under my name for the closing documents. I was never at that branch, I said. I have never been to Moorefield, Kentucky in my life. I did not sign those documents. Another pause. Longer this time. Ms. Ellison, if you're stating that you were not present at closing and did not authorize this loan, you'll want to file a dispute with our fraud department. I can transfer you now. Please, I said. While I was on hold, I opened my laptop and started a document. I typed everything I could remember about the past 18 months. Every phone call from my parents that had mentioned money, the dropped credit score, the unrecognized number, the way my mother had said we needed you to say yes like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. The fraud department was thorough. They asked me if I had ever provided my social security number to my parents. Yes, years ago, for tax purposes. Had I given them a copy of my driver's license? Probably, at some point, I had needed my father's notary stamp on something when I first moved, and I had emailed him a copy. Had I ever signed a power of attorney, or authorized them to act on my behalf? Absolutely not. They told me they would open an investigation. They told me to file a police report. They told me to contact the 3 credit bureaus and freeze my credit immediately. I did all 3 before noon. The police report was the hardest part. Not because the officer was unkind, he wasn't. He was a quiet man, with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, and he took down everything I said without interruption. The hard part was hearing myself say the words out loud. My parents forged my signature on a loan document. My mother confirmed it over the phone. Writing it as a sentence made it real in a way it hadn't been before. The officer told me that identity fraud by a family member was more common than most people realized. He told me there were options, including pressing charges. He gave me a case number. He told me to keep any written or recorded communication from my family. I drove home and I sat in my parked car in the lot behind my building for a long time. I thought about my mother's voice. The way she had said selfish, like it was a fact, like it was something that had been established long ago and simply needed to be restated. I thought about all the years I had spent trying not to be the difficult one, the one who caused problems, the one who made things harder. I had made myself smaller and quieter and more accommodating for so long that when they finally needed something big, really big, they hadn't even considered asking. They had just taken. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother. Mom said you're upset. Can we talk? I stared at it. Then I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and went upstairs. Over the next 2 weeks, I did not talk to my parents. I did not talk to my brother. I communicated with the bank's fraud department, with the detective assigned to my case, with a lawyer I found through my firm's employee assistance program, and with the credit bureaus. What I learned, piece by piece, was this. My brother's latest venture, a pressure washing business he had started with a business partner who turned out not to exist, had collapsed 8 months after it started. He owed money to suppliers. His personal credit was destroyed. He had gone to my parents, and my parents had decided the solution was a home equity line of credit against the house they'd owned for 30 years. The bank had approved my mother as the primary borrower but required a co-signer with a stronger income and credit profile. My mother had provided my information. My father had gone to the closing. Someone, the investigator later confirmed it was my mother, had signed my name. My brother had received $210,000 of the $287,000 line. The rest had gone to pay off some of my parents' existing debts. He had spent most of his share within 10 months. When the money was gone and the payments came due, nobody had any plan except to hope I would eventually agree to cover them. My lawyer was very calm about all of this. She had the energy of someone who had seen everything twice and found none of it surprising. "You have a strong case," she said. "You have a police report, the bank's fraud investigation, your mother's verbal admission, which you documented contemporaneously, and zero paper trail connecting you to this loan beyond forged documents. The bank is almost certainly going to clear you. The question is whether you want to pursue criminal charges against your parents." I had been thinking about that question for 2 weeks. "What happens if I do?" I asked. She walked me through it. Forgery, identity theft, bank fraud. Federal charges were possible given the amount and the bank involved. My parents were both in their early 60s. My father had a heart condition. A conviction would mean more than fines. "And if I don't?" I asked. "The bank still resolves the dispute in your favor, most likely. Your credit gets repaired, but your parents remain liable for the loan. If they can't pay, the bank forecloses on the house, and your brother has no legal consequences at all." I thought about my brother. I thought about the way he had texted me as though my being upset was an inconvenience, a mood to be managed. I thought about all the Sunday dinners where my parents had made small comments about my apartment being too expensive, my vacations too indulgent, my refusal to lend him money too cold. I thought about how they had taken my identity, literally my identity, and used it like a tool. "I want to pursue it," I said. My lawyer nodded like she had expected this. "Okay, then here's what we do." I didn't tell my family. I went quiet. I stopped returning calls, stopped responding to texts. My aunt reached out twice, clearly dispatched by my mother, and I replied politely that I was dealing with some personal matters and would be in touch. My brother sent 3 more texts, each slightly more aggressive than the last, and I forwarded them all to my lawyer. The bank completed their fraud investigation in 22 days. They removed the account from my credit report. They reported the fraudulent origination to the appropriate regulatory agencies. My credit score recovered. The detective called me on a Thursday evening to tell me that charges had been filed. "Both your parents?" I asked. "Your mother is the primary. Your father is named as a co-conspirator. The DA's office is also reviewing your brother's potential liability for knowingly benefiting from fraud proceeds." I thanked him. I hung up. I made dinner. Nothing dramatic. Pasta with vegetables, the kind of thing I made when I didn't want to think too hard. I ate it standing at my kitchen counter, looking out the window at the building across the alley, at all the lit windows and the ordinary lives happening behind them. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message was from my mother. Her voice was different from the first call. The hardness was gone. She sounded smaller. "Paige, we heard from the police. I need you to understand that we never wanted to hurt you. We were in a bad situation and we made a terrible decision, and I know it was wrong. Your brother is devastated. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. I'm asking you, as your mother, please don't do this to our family." I listened to the whole thing. Then I listened to it again. I saved it to my files. I had spent most of my life trying to make things easier for everyone else. I had shrunk myself. I had stayed quiet. I had told myself that keeping the peace was the same thing as being good. But there is a difference between grace and surrender, and I had confused them for a long time. My parents had not made a terrible decision. A terrible decision is forgetting to call on someone's birthday. A terrible decision is saying something thoughtless in an argument. What they had done was deliberate. They had gathered my personal information, transported it to a bank branch 60 miles from where I lived, signed my name and accepted money under my identity, and then said nothing for 18 months. And when it unraveled, my mother's first response had been to call me selfish. That was not a mistake, that was a choice, and choices have consequences. The case moved slowly, as legal cases do. There were hearings I was not required to attend. There were months of negotiation I mostly heard about through my lawyer. My father accepted a plea arrangement. My mother's case took longer. My brother called me once, in the middle of all of it. I answered, because by that point I had decided I was done performing avoidance. I was just done, period. "You're really going to do this?" he said. "To Mom and Dad? Over money?" "It's not about the money," I said. "Then what's it about?" "It's about the fact that they forged my name on a federal loan document and let me walk around for 18 months not knowing I owed $250,000. They were trying to help me, I know, I said. That's the part I've made peace with. They've always been willing to do anything for you. I just didn't realize anything included committing federal crimes with my identity. He didn't have an answer for that. I hope things get better for you, I said. And I meant it, mostly. I really do. But I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. I ended the call. My mother received a suspended sentence and 3 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay restitution for the months of missed payments and the bank's investigation costs. The house was eventually sold to settle the remainder of the loan, which my parents had to do anyway, since they couldn't afford the payments. My father's plea meant a fine and community service. He was lucky. My brother was not charged in the end. There wasn't enough evidence that he had known the specific method of funding, only that he had received the money. He went back to living with my parents in an apartment they found after the house sold. I found out about all of this over weeks and months of quiet updates from my lawyer. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt, mostly, was tired. And underneath the tired, something that took me a while to name: relief. Not because they suffered. I didn't want that, but because for the first time in my adult life I had not made myself smaller to protect someone else's comfort. I had said, this happened, and it was wrong, and I am not going to absorb it and move on as though it didn't. I froze my credit the day after the bank called, and it's been frozen since. I check my credit report every 3 months. I have a folder on my laptop with every financial document I own, password protected and backed up twice. I know what's in my name. I know because I look. It's not the most uplifting lesson, the idea that you have to guard yourself against the people who are supposed to love you most. But it's the true one. My studio apartment still has the neighbor who plays acoustic guitar. The elevator is still broken. I still eat cereal over the sink in the morning, and I'm still usually almost late for work. But when my phone rings now, I'm not afraid to answer it. I know what's mine, and I know it's safe.